Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and right now we're looking at Xira, the Golden Sting, a deck I am going to call Nightmare Fuel. But before we get to the deck, I've got a few little updates to say. We have hit 300 subscribers. Thank you so much. This is really exciting for me. I can't believe in such a short time we've grown so much, and we've gotten to see so many cool decks. Thank you for all of your support, and I really am looking forward to all of the different decks and all of the different, comments and things we can build together. The other thing I wanted to point out is that if you wanted to watch me play some Commander this Wednesday, I will be on MTG Mudsta's channel. I think we'll be live streaming some Commander, and I think it'll be around 6 or 7 Eastern Standard Time, though Google tells me it's now Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I don't know what that means, but around 6 or 7 in the evening EST. Come by and say hi. I would really appreciate it. But with all that out of the way, we're looking at Xira the Golden Sting. This deck comes to us from Toxic Sunshine, who says, is this even a viable deck? Can I make enough tokens and ping for enough damage with recursion I have in the deck? Is it even worth the extra turns? I don't know if English is your second language, but thank you for the message. They also have the restriction, prefer not to break the bank, but willing to buy 1 or 2 expensive cards. So I'm choosing to interpret the question of, is Xira even viable? And is the build itself viable? This is a really good question. And after we look at the commander and take a glance at the deck, we'll talk about this because maybe. This is a very ambitious idea and a very ambitious commander, and I really like the direction you're going with it, but viable is a difficult question to answer. However, before we go any further, if you would like me to take a look at one of your commander decks, there is a form in the video description down below where you can send me your deck and I will make a video on it. And if you would like your deck to be the next video I work on, there is a link for that too. I'm a little behind on videos. I was sick last week. I'm probably still sick now, but I'm making my way through it. And if you'd like to take a look at this deck list yourself, you'll also find it in the video description. All right, who is Xira the Golden Sting, and what kind of commander is she? Well, she's 4 mana in Jund colors. That's black, red, green. She is an insect assassin and 3/3 flying haste. And she has a particularly horrifying ability. Whenever she attacks, she will put an egg counter on another target creature without an egg counter. When that creature dies, if it has an egg counter on it, draw a card and create a 1/1 black insect creature token with flying. I think people call him Beador, something like that. For those who don't know how certain types of wasps work, they often will lay their eggs inside of other animals, I guess they're other insects, and then eventually their eggs will hatch from within, start eating the creature from the inside, and are birthed from it. It's kind of horrifying, I won't lie, and it is definitely a really messed up thing. Nature is metal for sure, and now we have a commander that does that. I really like their unassuming nature in this beautiful gown or dress. I guess this would be a gown. Before she lays eggs in you. Yeah, pretty horrifying. I also, maybe this is just me, but I really feel like the pattern on the horse is reminiscent of eggs. So whenever I see this horse, I'm doubly grossed out. I'm not a very squeamish person, but this is a lot. This very unassuming 1/1 flying insect creature is just very horrifying to me. So before we go into viability of Xira, let's talk really quickly, looking at the deck list on Tapped Out. We can see at a glance The deck's main theme is to use active treason or threaten effects, which steal our opponent's creatures for a turn. Then, it seems to be our goal is to sacrifice them ourselves, therefore destroying the creature and turning these threatened effects into kind of like, what would you call them, destroy effects with a damage component to them. But in addition, we also will get other effects from it. Notably, we can lay eggs in them, or we can do other such things as sacrifice them to braids, or sacrifice them to Zayatora to get treasure, and the like. That seems to be the main game plan, with obviously the strongest of these kind of abilities being the ones that are repeatable, whether it be Goblin Bombardment and Viscera Seer being repeatable sacrifice effects. I also see down here, where is it? Ashnod's Altar, but also the ones that allow us to repeatedly steal creatures, such as, let's see, I swore I saw, oh, there they are. The Captivating Crew lets us steal creatures for a mana cost as opposed to being spent, a whole card is spent. Or cards like Mob Rule or Seize the Spotlight that steal multiple creatures at once. So we've got a kind of, I don't know how to put this, a non-consent theme here. You're going to steal your opponent's creature without their consent, and then you're gonna lay eggs within them. This is like flavor-wise a very grim deck. I really like that. I feel like I need to bring a lot of attention to the fact that as a deck flavor, I really, really like where this deck goes. Whoops, I was clicking around and I clicked too far. All right, so with that in mind, let's talk about the word viability and what that means here. Well, one of the things to talk about with viability is like, are we talking about a power level sense of viability? Because oftentimes we are. Are we talking about this deck being powerful when everyone has mid-tier decks, like what we would consider a 4 or 5, decks that have an idea behind them, don't have much of a budget, and don't have a lot of cohesion? That can be a part of it. Sorry, I'm just writing down a card to show after. But also, are we talking about viability in the way I talk about viability, which is successfulness? And successfulness to me is, can the deck do what it wants to do? And not like constantly run into hiccups, not constantly defeat itself, not constantly get itself all tied up in knots and unable to just play its game plan. And I'm going to say maybe this deck can be successful. And it is nothing, and the problem is, it's not with the deck idea. I really do like the deck idea. I think it's really maximizing on what Xira can do, but it's really to do with Xira. For some reason, when they created this card in a commander set as a nod to a previous legendary creature, they worked so hard to make Xira such a difficult ability to kind of work with. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is this. Xira's ability is an attack trigger. It's not an enter the battlefield and attack trigger, it's just attack. So we can't abuse it by reanimating her or by blinking her, anything like that. That's off the table. We have to do attacks. And the only way to get additional attacks is by just that. Using cards like Aggravated Assault, using cards like, let's see, Seize the Day, Relentless Assault, cards like this that give us literally a full additional attack, harnessed by 4. Oh no, that's not that one I'm thinking of. But yeah, these are straight up just take another attack abilities, which, as you might see, are not cheap. They're usually 4 to 5 mana, and if not more than that. especially if they're going to be repeatable. So to use Xira's ability twice in one turn cycle is actually kind of difficult. The next problem is that they made the egg counter work in a way that's kind of strange. The egg counter doesn't actually care about how many egg counters there are. It's just if there's an egg counter. So we can't proliferate, right? Which is already kind of frustrating. And yeah, we can move the counters around, but every time we move a counter around, unless there's 2 counters on it, 2 egg counters, we're left with the same number of egg counters. So we're not like progressing our game plan. We're not increasing the number of card draws that we have, right? We are just, we're just kind of spreading it around. Finally, on that note of even if we could spread counters around, the fact that Xira will not put an egg counter on a creature that already has an egg counter, she doesn't like twins, I guess. Because of that, we can't even set it up with just her. We have to have proliferate. Does this make sense? Like, Xira is just so frustrating to build around because she just resists all the conventional means of making her ability strong. I may be also speaking from experience because when she was spoiled, I really wanted to play her, and I spent a good hour just thinking about it to come to this conclusion that there's just really nothing that could be done. Now, does that mean she's bad? No, I don't think so. I think she's still a very strong creature. She attacks with haste. She's a flying haste creature. That's not nothing. A 3/3 flying haste is a notable attacker in a shell like this. And if you think of her more like an incidental draw and a token creation, I think she gets a little better. Notably, this deck uses aristocrat style cards to kind of make the most out of the double, like every time you sacrifice a creature with an egg counter, you get another creature out of it. And I think that's a particularly strong setup. I also, in this deck, particularly like putting the counter on a creature that you are currently controlling so that you can sacrifice it and get the trigger right away. Another thing that's difficult about Xira is that if you put the counter on your opponent's creatures and you don't have a way to destroy that creature, you don't get the card until later. So you don't even instantaneously get the card. So she's just weird. She's really, really weird. Last thing I will note about that is that Rest in Peace effects are very, very good against her because they completely shut her down. And they completely shut her down after the egg tokens have already been put on. So that feels particularly bad. She's just tough. I'm still going to give you some options because I still think there's something here in a deck that we can play around with. But I think it is worth noting that Xira is just a difficult commander. You have to play her exceedingly fair. So like if you're not using her for like insect tribal, or if you're not trying to use her like in this deck in a very unique way, you're gonna be bashing your head against the wall. Let's look at the deck itself and let's look at the idea. I'm probably gonna go to my additions first because generally the deck looks good. The thing is, we're trying to cram a lot of strategies together, so we're starving for slots, right? Think about it in the sense that we need an aristocrats package, which we mostly have, which is good. Then we also need a threaten effect package, which we have probably more than we need, which is also good. And then we need room for what I would consider like generic enablers and payoffs, right? Like for example, Generous Patron here is a very strong card that draws you cards when you put counters on your opponent's creatures. This is really good with Xira, but not very good with the rest of the deck, right? Because of this, like I don't want to tell you to take Generous Patron out. I just put Generous Patron into in my Hapatra deck, so I know she's really strong. But the thing is, here, she's very, very dependent on your commander because we don't have other -1/-1 or other counter synergies, so we're kind of behind. And then we can look at something like Mirkwood Bats, which also really, really works mainly with your commander and doesn't do much else because most of the tokens you're creating are going to be our, what did we call them? Beethies? I've forgotten already. There are little horrid insect creatures. Those are the most of the tokens we're going to make. So without our commander, these aren't going to do much. Then we have the only ways. I didn't mention this, but the main way we're actually going to get around Xira's trigger, besides multiple attack steps, is by Stronic Resonator and Lithoform Engine style effects, which are copy triggered abilities, so we can get another use, like another egg on another creature. So those are actually good too, because you can also deal with the trigger of the creature dying. So you can actually double putting eggs on, and you can double the eggs hatching, which is really nice. But all that to say, we have quite a few cards that really just work as, you know, we have quite a few cards that work really well with the main theme, but a lot of cards that just generally only work with our commander, right? So yeah, let's go real quick on the cards. Like, sorry, I'm struggling to find a method to attack this deck because it's got 3 different kind of setups going all at once. So what I'm going to say is the best way to start off working with this deck is I would like you to find the cards that only work with your commander. Mirkwood Bats, Generous Patron, for example, and be a little critical with them. Venom Connoisseur just seems bad. I don't know what this is for, but see, the thing is, I can't even say just the creatures that that work with your commander, because Stronic Resonator and Lithoform Engine and Wolfgarb Icewing Dale all work with your commander, and you can't get rid of them because you need them to work with your commander. Okay, you know what? We're going to go back to the original idea. I'm going to suggest some things for your deck. Some really fun and some all over the place. And then we'll talk about the idea of how you should make cuts after that. So let's start with the boring cards. The boring cards are, I don't think you have enough card draw. You're in black, you might as well play the Night's Whisper, Read the Bones package, and if you want, Phyrexian Arena and Greed are also very strong, but I think I would start with Night's Whisper and Read the Bones at least. Even with Xira drawing you cards, you need to draw a lot more cards. Likewise, Greater Good is another card draw engine that I really like in this deck. It matches your commander's mana cost, which is a bit tough because this deck really needs its commander, but having Greater Good and a Act of Treason effect is just really strong, because not only do you get that attack in, not only do you get to lay an egg in them, but also you get to sacrifice it at the before you have to return it, and if it has more than 4 power, it has 4 or more power, you will be positive on cards. So that is really attractive. So Greater Good should be in there for sure. Also, if it's not clear, that art is about a man being consumed by insects. So it's really on flavor. I'm also going to name a few more flavor cards here. Carrion Feeder is just another sack outlet that I think is worth playing here. The more instant speed sack outlets you have, the happier you're going to be. And Carrion Feeder is really low mana and particularly strong, so you'll be happy having them. Looking at a few more insects that I think are probably worth playing. Grist the Hunger Tide I think is definitely worth playing, as not only does Grist create more insects, Grist, she's a sacrifice outlet to use some of, you can threaten, sacrifice, and destroy another creature, which is really good. I don't think this deck can use the fact that she's an insect in all other zones particularly well, but you can use that to reanimate her, among other things. And Grist's -5 is kind of strong in a deck like this where you can apply pressure to multiple opponents. So I think Grist is a really easy addition and still surprisingly cheap. I'm still surprised. Hornets Nest is a card that feels like it could work really well here. Mainly if you have a certain setup. If you have like Blood Artist, let's say, or let's say Zulaport Cutthroat because it's strong. If you have Zulaport Cutthroat, if you then have Goblin Bombardment and like something like an active Master's Ascension. Anything that increases the health of Hornet Nest. What you can do is you can sacrifice your insects to the Goblin Bombardment to damage the Hornet Nest to create another insect. Now, you can do this even without the Blood Artist effect to just turn your turn these insect tokens in which are just 1/1 flyers into the Hornet Nest insect tokens that have Death Touch, which are superior. But you can also use that to just like trigger a bunch of things for free. For example, Moldervine Reclamation, which I think is one of the strongest cards in your deck, would be very, very good to use to sacrifice and to draw a card, gain a life, and just re-get that insect. And as mentioned before, if you have a way to increase the health of Hornet's Nest, well, you can throw more insects at it, which is particularly strong. Another thing to look at, this one's more for fun, but Hornet Queen just really feels on theme. It is a pretty strong card. It gives you a lot of bodies to sacrifice, and it's particularly good to reanimate. Is it really conducive to the game plan? No, but it would generally increase the power level because I think the deck would benefit from a few more generically strong cards. Another generically strong card that I feel like is worth for you to play is Defiler of Vigor. Defiler of Vigor, I think, has enough green permanents in your deck to, one, you can spend your mana, your life instead of mana to reduce the mana cost, which is good, which is, of course, you know, you can use it on your commander. But two, of the Defilers, this one's the strongest because it puts a +1/+1 counter on each permanent you control, each creature you control, and you are going wide, right? You are going very, very wide, and just the ability to occasionally put 1 or 2 +1/+1 counters on your entire team could be rather good. I'll leave this for you to decide because this is one of those cards that does change the direction that we go into. So I think it's worth considering. And here's another one that also kind of, sorry, when I say change the direction, I mean like we might have to adjust numbers. Like you need more green permanents for this to be good. Another one that also kind of changes the direction we go into is Ryona. I'm not sure, Ryonia, I'm going to say. Because Ryonia works really, really good with your threatened effects. So you play her, you use Active Treason to steal an opponent's creature, and then that will satisfy the clause for Ryonia that you cast an instant or sorcery. And, oh, you get it for free. Oh, I didn't know this. Okay, I keep rereading this lady. I keep thinking you don't get any if you don't cast instants or sorceries, but you get a 1 for free. So already I think she's rather good, but what I really like here is that if you Active Treason and you get that creature, you can then make 2 additional copies of it. So you can be stealing valuable creatures, like the ones that have really good ETBs, like Ewit or other like Solemn Simulacrums and things like that, making copies of it, getting additional ETB triggers, and then sacrificing them all at end of turn. I do really like her here. She doesn't really fit the theme. She's not horrifyingly disgusting, but still, it does work in a way. Then I have 2 higher mana cards. I have 1 more card that works with our commander. This one's weird, and I wanted to suggest it anyways. It's Abstruse Archaic. What makes this card good is strange. So you can copy target activated or triggered ability you control from a colorless source. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now you might be thinking, well, Cursed, Xira isn't colorless, so we can't, double on her triggers. But you know what is colorless? Lithoform Engine and Strionic Resonator. This is a bit suspect, I will say. This is maybe not the greatest idea I've had. But if you were starving for another way to copy that triggered ability she has, you can use this to copy the things that copy her triggered ability. Is this good? I don't know. Are you playing fetch lands? That would be my question. I don't see, I guess the Panorama counts. Oh, and Terramorphic Expanse. So technically, this can double up on your fetch, your lands that search for other lands, so that's not nothing. But it's also 4 mana with your commander. Yeah, okay, maybe I'm convincing myself out of it. Don't play this card. But it is an interesting mechanic here. Okay, let's come to the last few cards I want to suggest, and then we can go back to talk to the deck as a whole. So 2 higher cost cards that I feel are kind of on theme. One is Might Makes Right. Might Makes Right says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control each creature on the battlefield with the greatest power, gain control of target creature an opponent controls until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste. So this is a 6 mana repeatable threaten effect, but you need the biggest creature. So the problem with this is our creatures are generally not very big. Unless we get Beastmaster's Ascension out, we're not going to generally have the biggest creature. However, I still think this is good here because you know how you get the biggest creature? You act of treason it. You find the biggest creature, you steal it, and then you have the biggest creature, you go to combat, and you steal another creature. I think that's really, really cool. I think that should work very much so with your main strategy, and I think you'll be very happy with it. It is a lot of mana, but I think it's worth it to get double effects. Another one that I think is interesting is Thieving Amalgam. So Thieving Amalgam, 7 mana. What it does is on each opponent's upkeep, which I like because it happens very quickly, you get to manifest their top card. And then whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this is good for a number of reasons. One, I just like the way it works with threaten effects, that each threaten effect now also drains 2 from the player who owns it, which does add up. I also like the fact that the manifest on each turn will give you more creatures and more sacrifice outlets, but sacrifice fodder. But it's something worth considering that when you are manifesting in a 3-color deck, you do have a pretty high chance of being able to cast the creatures that pop out. Like, the thing is, you'll know when you get the manifest token if you can cast it, and you'll have an idea, depending on the colors of your opponents, what your chances are. But there's going to be situations that you will be able to manifest their creatures, which is really, really cool. But at the same time, you're generally just going to be happy with the 2/2s. All right, the last 3 cards I have are all kind of the same type of card, though with, I guess, a budget consideration between them. And what they are is they are Savage Ventma effects. So these are effects when a creature attacks, you gain a certain amount of mana. And we want to use that with Aggravated Assault. The idea is Aggravated Assault and Savage Ventma is an infinite combo. You attack with the Ventma, you add that amount of mana, and then you use that mana to, on your next main phase, to activate the Aggravated Assault, and then you do another attack, etc., etc. The other 2 versions of that are better than Savage Ventma because they have haste is Grand Warlord Rada, who is less mana, though she makes mana based on the number of creatures attacking. So it's a bit inconsistent. As long as you have 5 creatures, it will work. But the other one is Cloth. And Cloth is unfortunately $20, so quite expensive to put together. However, we'll make mana based on the total power of attacking creatures. So they will create tons and tons of mana. And since they are creating 4 mana by themselves, as long as you're attacking with a 2-power creature, you or Xira, which would also with 3 get you to 7, you are, I said 2 power, it's not even that, it's 1 power, right? As long as you attack with an insect token and Cloth, you are making enough mana to constantly reactivate aggravated assault. So I like these, and the thing is, if you can't afford the Cloth, I think that's fair. Or afford maybe not, but if you can't budget for it, I think that's fair. But Grand Warlord Rada and Savage Ventma are really, really strong because there's a 2-card combo in your deck that can help you win games that you don't really have business winning, which is always nice. In addition, they are very good in your deck because your deck is very mana hungry, and having just the means to produce more mana is particularly good. And something that's worth considering, if you are in a setup that you have the ability to cast Savage Ventma, but you are unable, you don't see a way to give him haste to attack them, you can cast Active Treason on Savage Ventma, which will give him haste. And with that, you can start attacking and win the game that way. So a little niche corner case there. So those are my additions. And I want to come back to kind of the idea of what you should cut. So there's a lot of different directions that we can go into. And I think that's the decision you're going to need to make yourself, is you're going to need to decide which direction to go into. If you want to go all in on the Active Treason style plan, then what you should be doing is making sure you have room for Ryona, making sure you have room for Might Makes Right, Greater Good, though a few of these will go into no matter what, but like build around that in mind. And then you're generally kind of okay. You're probably cutting some creatures that you're not too interested in anymore. I would say Mirkwood Bats and Generous Patron for sure. And that's the direction you're going into. If you want to lean more towards just kind of having a generally strong Xira deck, then the cards you probably are going to cut are going to be some Active Treason effects, because unfortunately they are the ones that are the most I'm on the wrong one. They are the ones that are the most difficult to work with. They are one cast spells. You don't have ways to recur them back into your hand in a meaningful way. Maybe with Ewit you can get it back, but it's not like you're putting 2 or 3 cards back into your hand every turn. So with that in mind, you're going to run out of Active Treasons at a certain point. So it gets a little tricky. And Active Treason is a 1-for-1 deal, which is really, really hard in Commander. Sorry, let me rephrase. Active Treason is a 1-for-1 deal if you can sacrifice the creature. Otherwise, it's a 1-for-0 deal, because at the end of turn, they get the creature back. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of attack triggers, there's a lot of, powerful creatures to steal and defeat players with, which are really, really good, but most of the time, you're going to find these cards lacking, because they're basically all combo cards. So I would say the safest thing to do would be to take a few cuts here and there, but also cut down a few more of these Active Treason effects if you can. I think that would be the general direction I would go. I don't want to go too much into the weeds here because, once again, you were asking about the viability of the deck. Now, you didn't really talk about what power level the deck is at, and I'm going to say right now, the deck is kind of trying to do something that's really difficult to do. So instead of saying like, hey, let's make it viable, like more powerful and more consistent, let's start by kind of finalizing the theme. Because, there's a lot of directions that we can easily suggest this deck to go to kind of improve the deck, probably adding just some more generically good cards. But I don't think that's as fun. Eventually, the thing that will hold the deck back will be Xira herself. So instead, I'd rather lean into the theme, and I'd rather go all in on things like Might Makes Right, things like Ryona, things like Thieving Amalgam, especially Thieving Amalgam. Go into this direction, go into the Active Treason egg-laying direction, and see where, how far you can go, right? Kind of solidify what you see as your win condition and your direction, and then we can kind of go from there. Because there's definitely a lot of cards we could be really stringent on here and kind of cut. I'll go really quickly through the creatures. I think Venom Connoisseur doesn't belong here. I think Endless Cockroaches is too close. I get why it's there. I get it works on theme. but you're already trying to pay 3 mana a turn for active treasons. Do you have an additional 3 mana for endless cockroaches? Probably not. Generous Patron should go. Woe Strider should probably be Carrion Feeder. It's just too much mana. Though I really like the idea of laying an egg in the goat. That's just horrifying, so I do get why that's there. Mirkwood Bats, likewise, just kind of feels off. Just really only works with our commander mainly, and I don't think that's good enough. Prowling Geistcatcher is cute, but I think it's worth keeping if we're going the active treason route, so we'll keep that. Kurloth Knight is really cute. I really do like it, but I would be kind of hard-pressed to kind of suggest this, because at a certain point, you're just going to want to put the insect counters on your own creatures. Sorry, the egg counters. So Kulrath Knight, unless you've been just putting egg counters on all your opponent's creatures, just won't do that much. That being said, I think if you play the knight and you put 1 egg counter on like their biggest thing, that might be enough. So it's close. I would test this out a bit more. Radiant Performer. This is too much mana to get another effect. So it's 5 mana to copy that spell or ability for each other permanent or player. Okay, so you get all of them. Okay, this is fine. So either active treason everything or egg counter on everything. No, you can't use egg counter because it's a triggered. Well, it's a triggered ability. So yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, this is fine. A little strange, but fine. Return a target permanent card. I think Spirit Leaf Avenger, though it's an insect, is just not really where you want to be. The mass number of the cards you want to return to your hand are not permanents, they are sorceries. So this kind of misses it, but the rest of the creatures are fine. Angrath is fine. The rest I think is pretty good. This keeps bothering me. I would get rid of Obelisk of Jund. I don't think it's particularly good. And even Whisper Silk Cloak is probably unnecessary here because Xira has flying. And if she dies, she dies. There's not much you can do. I think this is too much mana just to make her... Like, I would use the Lightning Greaves instead because at least that can be useful on other creatures. Okay. Those are generally the things I am going to suggest. As I said before, I've been kind of really critical on this deck, but I mean, you did ask me to tell me, is this even viable? And the answer in the end is kind of. I do once again suggest you kind of go all in. You got to go further into the strategy and try some weird stuff that I've suggested, because toning it back is just not really going to make the deck fun, and Xira's just going to hold you back. But I am really interested in seeing another draft of this. I think this deck could definitely be successful for what it is. We just need to adjust a lot of things. We need to pick the exact number of active treason effects. We need to see what kind of support we can add. We're kind of all over the place, but with time, this deck can come together. I hope this video was helpful for you. I know it's also been all over the place, but I hope you can use this information. And when you want to send me the next draft, there is a link in the video description for that. And if you would like to send me any deck and make that deck the next video I make, there's a link in the video description as well. And as always, if you would like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. And yeah, Xira is a horrifying nightmare creature. I am very, very sad that she's not immensely playable. I think she works really well in the 99 of decks and not so much as the commander. Still, if one day we have the means to make her much stronger, I would be the first to pilot her because she's just horrendous and I love it. All right, good luck.